did want to talk about this. Now, I know we haven't mentioned it the last couple days because there's been a bunch of things going on, and the just various things that were happening kind of took precedent or priority over this. But on Sunday, I think and I hope, one, that you went to church, and two, that your pastor at some point said something about Charlie's assassination. Now, there was a TPUSA employee that I know well who posted on Facebook, I think it was Saturday, and he said, if your pastor doesn't mention the Charlie Kirk assassination, you don't go to a church, you go to a country club. Now, some people might think that sounds a little bit harsh, but the reality of it is this. Over the last couple days, I've talked to several people that I know that said, yeah, my church didn't say anything about that. And obviously I hit them with the response of, yeah, you might want to consider going to a different church. There have also been famous churches around the country that had no mention of Charlie's assassination. But here's why I think this is so important that churches mention this. Because it doesn't actually matter about the politics. I mean, it can. Charlie was a fervent believer in Christ. He espoused the Bible everywhere he went. But that's really not even the point in this particular situation. The point here is that regardless of what you think of Charlie, regardless of what you think of his opinions, regardless of whether or not you like the guy or dislike the guy, that doesn't even matter. This is a massive, massive cultural pinpoint in U.S. history. I've said this many times. I don't think any event has been this saturated in the minds of the American populace probably since 9/11, maybe since the Trump administration first took office in 2016. But overall, everyone in the country has been talking about this. It's been the forefront of their mind because Charlie was such a massive and influential figure. Now, all of that is to say that if your church does not have any input on the biggest cultural story in decades, what is your church doing? The entire purpose of the church is to guide people and guide individuals in how they should interact with themselves, with their relationship with God, and with the society that they exist in. If your church, for whatever political nonsense reason that you give, says, no, we're not going to touch this, effectively what you're doing is, again, ignoring one of the biggest events in American history in the modern age. That is like going to church on the Sunday after 9/11 and the pastor not mentioning it at all. It would be an insane thing to do regardless of the politics, specifically because there is a massive cultural permeation of Charlie in the American mind. And to not even mention that is absurd and honestly malpractice, in my opinion. I recognize that is not everybody's church, and I also recognize that the vast majority of churches, one, were much more full this weekend than they have been in the past, and two, did actually mention something. My concern, though, is with the large amount of churches that still did not mention it, and it's not even about the politics. It's about the fact that your church is ignoring a cultural, momentous turning point, if you will, that needs to be discussed regardless of how you feel about Charlie or his ideas.